Began flying when I was 14, and before that I used to travel around with my father and watching him flying in the competitions, and I was never big enough to lift a glider off the ground, so as soon as I could do that I began to fly. And then the first year I flew pretty much every weekend when I was not at school, and I tried to do as many hours as I could. I think the first year I did nearly 100 hours of flying. And then I started competitions in Australia, competing for 2 or 3 years in Australia. Then in 2000 I went overseas to Spain for my first competition overseas, and I came third behind Andre Wolf and Oleg in the Spanish Nationals. And since then I've been competing all around the world, flying with better pilots and trying to gain more experience. I did lots of flying in Australia every year with, where I lived there was a lot of the top Australian pilots, probably 4 out of the top 6 Australian pilots at my home site. So I was very lucky to be able to fly with all these great pilots every day and learn from them. And then I became as good as them pilots, but not as good as the rest of the pilots in the world. So to increase my experience I had to travel to other countries and fly with other pilots and gain more experiences, and now doing that it's taken me to the next level to be able to compete with these guys and race with them, and it's basically how I've gotten to where I am today. When I first started flying, obviously Thomas Suchanek and Manfred Römer were, far above everybody else, and it was amazing watching them to fly in competitions and be so far in front of the other pilots, and trying to understand how they can do this, and then slowly a lot of the other pilots have almost caught up to this level. Unfortunately, these 2 pilots are not hang gliding anymore, so it's hard to know, but there's a few other good pilots. A lot of the Brazilian pilots here, Andre Wolf and Nene, and some of the top pilots here, they race very fast in the strong conditions, and they take many chances, and they're very hard pilots to beat. And I've learned a lot from this sort of flying, from the racing, flying with these guys in Brasilia and here in Andradas. And then I've flown a lot with other pilots like Brett Hazlitt and people like this that don't take so many chances. They fly with the gaggle, and they try and have a good result every day, but maybe not winning the day, just having good results and having at the end of a competition a good result. So it's the combination of these 2 pilots is what you need to be, and you need to be able to take the chances when you feel that it's a good time. And when you feel it's not a good time, you need to just relax and fly with the guys and not try and beat them. And I've learned a lot from all these sort of pilots, from trying to use the different tactics to win competitions, and I'm slowly getting there. I noticed the main thing in the competition is to be very consistent, and I noticed the top pilots every day, they used to be at the goal every single day, and they're not landing out. And so for the first 2 or 3 years I decided that my main objective for a competition was just to make goal every single day and not worry about how long it took me, or I might fly for 6 hours and the winner might take 3 hours. But I just wanted to try and complete the task every single competition. And then once I started completing the task every time, I started to look at why I was taking longer and why these pilots were so much better, and then I slowly began to increase my speed, and it's always very hard to know what you're actually learning, but trying to fly with these top guys, you might stay with them for only 1 thermal. And then the next year you stay with them for 2 or 3 thermals, and you watch them and see the decisions they make, and you learn like this. And the more you can try and fly with these pilots, stay with them, and see what decisions they're making and why they went this way or that way. It all helps for experience in the future, and it's very hard to tell somebody what you need to do to become a better pilot. I think the only way is to fly and fly a lot all the time. Now I'm flying 400 hours a year for the last 4 years, so I think that's the only way you can get better at any sport is to practice all the time. For me, it's obviously the more experience you have at flying, the more natural everything becomes, and the less you have to think, the better you fly. So the more you can use your intuitiveness, I don't know if that's the right word, but the easier it is. You can think about other things and not have to worry about, you know, that the next thermal you're going to go there, because you already know that you're going there, and you're thinking about the 2 or 3 thermals after this now. And I think that is the biggest part in hang gliding is not thinking too much, but always knowing where you're going and being able to use your mind in other ways to beat the competitors. Every pilot has a very different technique to thermaling, and I've seen 4 or 5 of the world's best pilots using all different techniques. Some like to fly a lot flatter and have some VG. I never thermal with any VG, and I often have quite a steep bank angle. Always flying very slow, and I think for me the best thing is to make sure I stay in the thermal. A lot of people will fly flatter and they fall out of the thermal, and I think the most important thing is to always make sure you're in the thermal. That's why I always have quite a lot of bank and make sure I stay in the strongest part. Even though my climb rate is maybe not as good, this staying in the thermal makes up for the climb rate. So for me, I thermal quite different than most pilots, and it seems to work for me, but other pilots have a much different technique, and we all climb the same. So it's whatever you feel comfortable with, and you know, whatever you're used to doing is the best way to thermal. It's just to gain experience, and like I said, is to stay in the thermal. It's always the best way to climb. Also, there is a lot of people have their varios set with a sync alarm at 2 or 3 meters down before the alarm comes on, and I very strongly disagree with this. I have mine set on 0, so as soon as I fall out of the thermal, I know that I'm in the sync, and this makes me always want to get back into the lift. And most pilots in the world don't do this. There's only a few of us that fly like this, and I think it helps for when you're very low and you're in very light lift to actually stay in the air and not land, and this can make the difference between winning and losing competitions. So, you know, climbing the fastest is not always the secret to winning. It's also staying in the air sometimes, which also wins competitions.